Hey everyone, Panyo here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. I highly encourage everyone watching to join us in the Art Blocks Discord. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. And now let's introduce our guest for this afternoon. We have generative artist Raven.
Hey everyone, nice to see you all.
What's going on, Raven? How are you doing today?
Doing good, Fanyo. Another day. Loving it. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad to have you on. I want to talk about, a couple of the projects you put on Art Blocks. But, first off, maybe you can kind of kick things off by telling us a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island, which is a good New England town. And, at an early age, got into computers and kind of from like the gaming front of things, and building my own gaming rigs and stuff like that just to play games. And in high school, I actually was fortunate enough to be kind of selected to this in our public school system there. They have this pre-engineering robotics program that I was selected for. And we had a great teacher. Shout out to Mr. Speckles, still there, still kicking. And was introduced us to engineering and programming and electrical engineering, and really started to kind of get my brain kicking as far as thinking about technology and how to solve problems. At the same time, my family is kind of an artistic family in some ways. My grandfather was a commercial artist, so he did work for the local newspaper, and did back before Photoshop, and all the tools we have today. Artists actually had to draw out newspaper ads, kind of Mad Men style, and come up with the concepts. And it wasn't digital, it was analog, and then you had to get them into the paper. So he did a lot of that work. And he also was, also did a lot of sculpture and painting. So I was exposed to that at an early age. So I think when I was growing up, I had a number of influences as far as on the technology side and on the artistic side. But it wasn't for much later. I mean, I've only been doing generative art for a few years now, that those two actually have, kind of melded together to kind of form my generative art practice.
Awesome. And then with regards to, when you started learning about generative art and being an artist yourself, were there some artists you looked up to and inspired your work kind of early on?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously, the big names in the space, Dimitri, Cherniak, Tyler Hobbs, I think, even someone like Alita Sun, I think, these people that are have been doing it for a very long time. And I think that's something that as a newcomer kind of the space only the last couple of years, to see these people that have been at it for a very long time and have the both the technical know-how and also the artistic sense is really kind of inspiring and really who I continue to look up to and kind of want to grow as I grow in my own practice, looking at those mentors and kind of figuring out like what's the wizardry behind the scenes that these artists know that I don't know yet, or but again, you go back and forth on that particular point because there's this temptation to get overly technical and make it a tech demo, which is generative art is not. So you always have to stay kind of also centered in your own self as well, and your own individual artistic vision, and because you don't want to just emulate everyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm actually kind of curious, you brought up, Tyler, Dimitri, Alida, and I'm curious, it's what's great about our space, especially having, our Discord server. How do you view like the communication, how you can have access to have conversations, with these artists or collectors, reaching out to you? How do you kind of view that special bond that you can create online with these collectors?
It's amazing. And, it's just, it's, the whole Discord and the Web3 space is absolutely, I think we're still, as we're in it, it's still like, I think we understand the gravity of it, but I think many years from now will be even more obvious how influential this time is. And specifically around that point of connecting communities and allowing creators and collectors to connect on a daily basis and to also like evolve the space together, right? There's just so much that close kind of back and forth communication feedback loop that we're able to develop new concepts, new products, new art very, very quickly and iterate faster than I think we've ever been able to before, which is going to be, I think it's just a great model that's going to create great art in the future, and the incentives are there with the royalties and things like that. So that just so excited about the future of not only generative art, but just art in general with these new mechanics that are allowing for those incentives to be there. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm curious to kind of take a step back, how did you get into the NFT crypto space? Was it, were you influenced by some of these artists that you were speaking of, and they kind of brought you into, this Web3 space, or how did you come about getting into this area?
I gotta give the shout out to Kevin Rose for that. I mean, I've been following him for a while and was listening to his podcast one day, and was experimenting generative art at that time, but I didn't hear of art blocks. I didn't hear of really NFTs or anything on that front. But then it was that episode that I think a lot of people that listened to Proof, the podcast that a lot of people cite was the one with DC Investor. That he had, I think it was maybe early March of 2021, around there, or late February, something in that range. And as soon as I listened to that, I think other people have said the same thing. I immediately went home, got on art blocks, and just started collecting. And just it completely like when I heard that, and it really just I could immediately see the use case of NFTs and this and the ability for now digital art to become what it is, what we're all experiencing it becoming. And I went home and started buying art blocks that day. I think my first mint was, I think it may have been it was either Enso was around that time, or it was the first generative artworks project.
Was it Imperium?
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of those two factory projects.
Or from Matto, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They were kind of released at the same time, and that was my first mint, and it was an amazing time, and that the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into some of your projects, but I'm curious first. As far as your name, it's spelled out r4v3n, and I know you go by Raven, but how does what is the story behind your name, your artist name?
Sure. So I think it's leet speak. It's this kind of internet code that old 80s hackers I think started, or something, where it's letters numbers are basically replacing letters and phonetically spelling something out. Like 1337 is leet. That's like what it like, or elite. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's this Raven and leet speak. And I think I always liked like the bird ravens. Like I think crows and ravens, I don't have as many at my new house, but at my old house, we had a lot of them. And they're always just so smart birds. They're like incredible. I think the most amazing thing that they do, which if you observe them, is they actually chase like predators away, which if you see any hawks like flying over, they'll actually coordinate in these crazy groups and they make special calls that say that like, oh, it's a hawk. And then they all chase the hawk like out of the neighborhood. It's wild to see. That's more like crows, but I think ravens would do that as well. But just their intelligence, I've always liked them as an animal. So kind of, that technology, hacker side meeting kind of, a really cool animal. And that's kind of how I came up with the name.
Cool. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm always been curious, and I've just never asked. So I'm glad we're able to, get some little bit of clarity behind that.
Awesome.
If you don't mind, actually, maybe we can go ahead and see some of your early generative art pieces that you created.
Sure. Yeah. I want to jump over to screen sharing.
Yep.
Yeah, I just had you asked me to kind of share a few, and I just went back to, I actually had, I didn't save a lot of work from that time, but this was a few years ago, and I did, but I have a couple P5 examples here. This is one of them. This is probably one of the first works that I did, just messing around in here. And it basically is just, a very, I'd call it shields up is kind of if I had to pick a name for these, because they remind me of some space, alien, maybe spaceship or something that's like spinning its shield up around it, but you can't really see the actual spaceship. Something like that. I need to work on the storyline and the narrative around it. But that's kind of one of them, and I just really like the look of it, and I like how it's hinting at this center circle that's there, but is not like really visible, right? You're seeing it from the fact of these ovals that are being rotated around that center, and then implicitly by those ovals being rotated around it, it's actually defining this circle in the center, which I think is like is cool to me. So that one, and then I think another one in the same vein was this one. Did I copy the whole thing? That doesn't look right.
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah, I didn't copy the whole one. But this is, that's the same one. Sorry. We're doing it live.
No problem at all. Well, that's cool.
Go.
I mean, I'm glad you're able to share that piece. It sounds like I always find it's cool to kind of go back to some of those early pieces because, as people kind of grow as an artist over time, it's nice to kind of see where they came from. So, oh, this is one right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the other one I wanted to show, just because it's on the same concept, but then I added some color to it and added a little bit more than that. This one actually, I did mint this one on Foundation later, and I think Art on Internet is pretty collector. I think they're starting a museum or something, but they actually collected this one on Foundation, so it's awesome. An NFT. Yeah, so for sure, this is kind of some of my earliest work in the space, but I'm always looking for new ideas. But as you know, like I've kind of evolved into more of this paint texture right now that I've been doing for a while, which I don't know. I may continue to do that, or I'm always or come up with a new technique. It's kind of, I think I get even before this I did photography. And, you get kind of, for a while, I think creatively I get like in a certain mode, and then, I maybe get tired of the technique eventually, and then we'll rotate onto something else. But it's cool.
Very cool. And I'm curious to know, you mentioned, photography, like where do you get your inspiration from when you're thinking about coding projects? And it sounds like, photography is kind of an outlet for you. Do you, is that more like nature based, or do you go to museums, parks? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. For me, it's kind of, I think it does come from nature, like to some extent. I think anytime you do some quote unquote forest bathing, or you walk in nature, or you observe nature, I think it is definitely good for the soul, as well as, just good for your artistic sense. And I think, emulating nature is always a good way to do art, because, it's so ingrained in us, in our soul, and at the deepest levels of us, that if you can emulate nature well, then you're hitting at something pretty deep. So I think that's definitely definitely inspiration for me. But I think honestly, like a lot of times it's not, I can't really pinpoint what the inspiration is, to be honest. And I think that's a good thing. If you really, I think the most important thing is just like, does it resonate with you as an artist, right? This idea, this concept, if it comes to you, is it something that you feel is expressing something that you feel needs expressing? And it could not even and so a lot of times it's not something that is like you can consciously maybe articulate. This is at a level, a more artistic level, or kind of a more meta level than maybe your conscious level of thinking. And you just have to develop that sense, I think, and just like feel confident that, okay, I dig this. This is looking good to me. This is saying something to me at that level, at that deep level. And then, that's how you know that, okay, this is something I want to share. I want to put out there.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I want to transition over to talking about your projects on art blocks called Moments, as well as Pieces of Me. I know these are inspired by abstract expressionist oil paintings. So I'm curious to know, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, the concept behind both of these projects.
Sure. So I think they both are inspired by, like you said, abstract expressionism, which is a art movement that was kind of, mainly around New York City in the mid-century of last century. And it kind of focused on, like, again, back to that core kind of artist layer, you can almost call it, or that below consciousness layer of ourselves, that emotional, you may call it, artistic, whatever you want to call that layer. That movement was all about that, about the artist being in the moment when they're creating the piece, and basically just doing whatever they feel is like, the right thing to do at that moment. And you have Jackson Pollock just, basically just drawing, dripping paint all on the all over the canvas. Exactly. Yeah. And you have all different you have Mark Rothko, for example, as well, like doing his the kind of color fields, very distinct, which Moments has some a nod to him with the lapses in there. But it's really just, completely kind of painting in the moment and things like that. And that's why it's really abstract. It's really a deep level. And that's kind of where the inspiration came from, looking at those types of paintings.
Great. And then, is there any story or any kind of relation to the names of the projects for, Moments and Pieces of Me? Is there, like, I'm always curious, like, how do people come up with, a title for a project? Is that something you do kind of on the front end, or you wait till the project is finished?
I usually wait till the project's finished. I think for Moments, I think, like I said, I think that aspect, I think that the two things. One thing is this thing, as I was saying earlier, of being in the moment, and you're creating something in the moment, and trying to reduce any of those maybe cognitive layers that would judge something. And you're trying to just like what that movement is all about is just like putting your feelings onto the canvas. So I think that the moment in the moment is very important in that, right? So that's where I think that came from. And also just combining that with the blockchain, you have, the moment it's, that the art is created in a moment with the collector minting it and the artist providing the code. And that at that moment on the blockchain, once, it'll never happen again, the art is created. So there's something very special about the type of, long form generative art that we're doing on the blockchain that has this very timeless quality of it, of it's minted in that moment, in a collaboration between the artist and the collector.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then I'm always curious to know, when, coding a project, especially for this one specifically, you have a very beautiful, like, brushstroke feel. Like, how do you I mean, I know what a brushstroke looks like, when you physically, take a paintbrush and you kind of paint it over a canvas, but how do you, I guess, go about coding that? Because I've noticed that between the two projects, the brushstrokes are different. Some of them stretch across, the entire canvas. Some of them are kind of shapes of almost like half circles and yeah, or like grid-like features where it kind of like has, a bunch of small strokes paired up with a bunch of big ones. But maybe you can kind of take us through like how do you actually give off that actual brushstroke feel, and then why you went with those kind of specific styles of paintbrushes.
Sure. So I think that starts with observation, right? Like that's something that observing, like you said, paint and brushes and thinking of, okay, how does that actually work, right? Like how does that I guess more in a physics way, right? Like how when you are putting paint on paper or something like that, I think you can. I've started to observe. If you observe it, you notice that wow, it's a lot of kind of almost parallel lines, right? That's the bristles are kind of even lined up on the paintbrush, in kind of almost this parallel fashion. And when you do a brush stroke, that's kind of what it is. So it's kind of just observing that and saying, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of lines. I'm going to have to probably make them somewhat parallel but not completely parallel because, then we need to add some elements so it doesn't look so mechanical, so computed, and that's something that I think great generative art, does well. Is it starts with that structure that's very hard and rigid and computational, but then how can we add, this layer of imprecision on top of it, where you can add more of a human element because humans are not perfect. And that's something I really enjoyed in my art is observing, trying to emulate, something, but then adding a human touch on it so that it's not perfect. And I think that really speaks, at least to me, at a deep level when all those things kind of come together. And I think, thankfully it's, the collectors of my work, I think would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you definitely give off a very like natural, like you said, kind of a human brushstroke feel to it, which I think it's probably not easy to execute. And I think that's just like the details that you need, especially when, a big focus of your project is, those long or short, brushstrokes. Moving on, I want to talk about the color palettes. And I'm curious to know, how do you decide on the background colors and matching them up with the different brushstroke colors?
Sure. I think with that, I think the colors always come at the end for me. I start a project and I always kind of get the form down. I think is important. I actually start black and white, and get the form of what I want down. And then I will then go and add colors later. And I think that, that's, at least for me, works because then I can continue to work on colors. And that's actually more of the fun stage of the project for me is once we get to the color stage, because then it's not as much like cognitive, really like trying to figure out the math or try to figure out the coding or, really solving kind of the hard problems. Those are kind of solved. And now I can kind of focus on more the artistic element of it. But yeah, I think my projects, if people want to learn about color, learning color theory is something that is great to learn. And with Piece of Me, one thing I really liked is I took some of that color theory and actually coded it in. So there's a number of kind of palettes in Piece of Me that are not, I haven't preset into them. They actually are generated by picking a color and then around the color wheel picking other colors that are depending on what palette it is, that go well with that color.
Cool.
I think something as well too is picking which I think and Piece of Me especially I looked into more than Moments is the amount of color, right? Like I think in Moments I kind of made it so that okay, all the colors, I mean the accent maybe happens a little bit less, But I think in Piece of Me, I was more conscious with not all colors appear the same, right? There's a main color, and then there's like maybe accent color, which is a complementary color, which is, appears less than maybe that main color. So it's also like, I think that was something I learned in Piece of Me. It's just like getting it more like it doesn't all have to they don't have to all be in the equal amounts. You can add a little touch of this and have mostly this color. And if you do that right, it kind of makes it a little bit more compelling.
Absolutely. And, is there also, I'm interested to know a little bit about the palette names itself. I always find that kind of interesting because, some people associate palette names with, things that are meaningful to them. And so I'm curious to know for you, is there any association with the color palette names to, something in your life?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think a lot of them come from nature. If you look at the palettes, we have a lot of different ones that are nature based. I think, also just one of them is called Sienna, which is my daughter. So that's something very close to me is that palette, obviously. So it's really, I look to a lot of different sources for those names, and I think I have fun with them too as well. But yeah, they come from nature. They come from just cultural things like war paint, for example. It's just like, this one behind me, if you can see, is that's lava, because I looked at kind of volcanoes, and I noticed that they have kind of that soot layer. They have that red layer, orange layer rather, of like the magma. But then also, they have like, there's blue volcanoes too that have a certain type of chemical that they actually will have like blue lava. So that's where I added that blue in there as well, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's kind of just a look into my thinking on color and naming color palettes and how I come up with color palettes. Sometimes I just, like you said, a lot of times I look in nature like that and I see a color, kind of something that I'm trying to emulate and be like, okay, like let's make a color palette off of that.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's awesome. And I do want to comment on the blue. I think it was such a really, really nice touch that you added into the project.
Thank you.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the features, that maybe might not be apparent for people that are, checking out some of the mints. So I'd love for you to kind of talk a little bit about the rainbow feature, which I know is in Pieces of Me. And I personally really, really love the addition of Speckles. I think it adds a very realistic look. But yeah, maybe you can talk about rainbow and maybe some of the other features that you're interested in sharing with viewers.
Cool. Do you want to jump into the screen share?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that.
Okay. Let's do we can do some of these. So you want to let's start with moments and look at the rainbow. I had one queue up here. I think that this is obviously a homage to Snowfro.
Yeah.
And naming it Hyper. I reached out to him when I was making this project and said, "Do you have a trademark on Hyper?" And he said no. So I was able to use it, and I just think it's just a nod to Chromie Squiggle and what started art blocks.
It's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, and I mean, rainbows happen in nature, and I thought this is just a cool, rare, fun, feature for it. It has two. If we can. I think there's a way to sort, but if I go back here, I don't waste too much time. But there's also there's also two versions of the rainbow one of Hyper, and why am I not finding it? There it is. There's also this dark version as well.
Mm-hmm.
So so it appears in a dark version, also a lighter version. I like this one. This is a this one's interesting because it's called extra dimensional paint thickness, with this, and it kind of makes like a really unique one. Yeah, this is something that I don't think I'll continue it through all my projects, but both moments and Piece of Me have some type of rainbow feature in them.
Mm-hmm.
Piece of Me, it's a little more hidden, but I think that's pretty cool.
Awesome. And I'm interested to know, as far as bugs are concerned, I'm always interested and curious, from an artist perspective, like how do you look at bugs in general? Like I know there's definitely, that's kind of the cool thing about generative art is that, sometimes you'll, as an artist, I know sometimes people will be like, hey, I want to like keep that in last minute, that seems like something fun. Like how do you view those? And were there any bugs that you experienced in these projects that, you were interested to keep on?
Yeah, I wanted to actually, if you want to go back to the screen share really quick,
Yeah.
there's actually one that actually I made it that happened when I was working on Moments, was this one, which was actually a bug, and it turned out I liked the look of it a lot. Yeah, and I ended up selling it on Foundation. But I think bugs are really interesting. Like it's kind of like you said, like I titled this Happy Accident, and because it was just like an accident and it's a quote unquote bug, but then you can come with really cool outputs that way sometimes as well. It's interesting talking about bugs too, because it's something that our particular kind of form of art that we're doing is, with long form generative art and the way art block's structured, it's kind of, you have to button down the bugs a lot, and that's kind of a big part of the process, because you have to be consistent, right? And you don't know the mints beforehand, and it's kind of you're rolling the dice, and that's fun, but also it's you really have to kind of button down and have the consistency there to make sure that all the outputs are aesthetically pleasing or fit inside of your kind of the project. But by doing that, sometimes you do miss out on some crazy things you didn't expect, right? Completely. So sometimes it's fun to just hop into the Moments code or into the Piece of Me code or anything, and just play around with stuff and see what happens, with it. And sometimes there's some crazy stuff that comes out that you didn't expect that looks great, and that's fun,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the beauty about the space that we're in. So I appreciate you sharing that. As I know that, so I know you were at Token Art and there were a couple of your pieces exhibited in the space, which I thought looked stunning. As far as the curation, the specific pieces, and then just seeing them all together. I think looking at art as sets, especially with a lot of these projects on art blocks, really kind of highlights the broad range of outputs, within the same project. But I'm curious, what do you think of, like, how do you want your art displayed? I know you've seen it printed and you're offering prints, but are there other methods that you're interested or okay with that you would want people to, kind of showcase your art?
Yeah, I mean, I think print, I think is my preferred medium for these two projects, just because I think the paint, I think, and thanks everyone that was at Token Art. I had such good feedback, and it was great, hearing from everybody that they kind of also enjoyed them printed, and a lot of people were coming up to me saying, "Hey, I didn't realize the detail in this until I've seen it this size and printed." So it definitely, that's why with Piece of Me, I offered kind of free prints to anybody who minted on the first day, and ended up sending out I think over 100
Wow.
prints, and that's something that I really is my preferred medium. That said, I think they still look good on a screen and things like that. So if people want to display it in a digital display, I think that's a great way too. So it's really up to the collector. I definitely think that people should see them printed. Really, that's the way I enjoy them, but I think other mediums are fine too.
Excellent. And I'm interested also to know a little bit about, we were talking a little bit about this through DMs, downtime or your kind of creative blocks. Like, how do you how do you approach a creative block, and what is your goal, if any, when you have this time to kind of focus?
Definitely, yeah. I think like as we've been talking, like I think I've been in one of those since the beginning of the year, and I've been kind of haven't really produced much work this year. But I think on that front, like the one thing I've learned dealing with these is like you just have to relax and not force it, because I think there's a temptation to just go and work and produce art that when you're not feeling it. And just me personally, I think I just couldn't do that. Art for me is very much, it's very much you have to be in the right kind of space and mood, and you have to have the inspiration. And a lot of that I feel like I can't really control and I can't force. And I don't really want to force it either. And I want to just like relax, and if it comes, it comes, which I know it will eventually. It just I want to always be putting out good work that I'm proud of, and something that's really resonating with me. But in some of that you just can't control, and that's okay. And that's one of the reasons why I at this point I probably could do gen art full time. But I've been an engineer for many years, and I continue to do that over at Proof. And it's something, and the reason I do that is just because it's then I don't have to worry about like having to make a living off my art. Like it really can be something I do in my free time, and I don't have to feel that need to produce art and that pressure to produce good art to make a living. So it's something that a conscious choice that I make that works for me.
Yeah. It sounds like it's kind of different with everyone, and sounds like you've kind of found like a happy medium between two. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely. It's at least for me. And I don't know if that will be forever, but like that's, I enjoy doing work, like kind of, and doing art in my downtime. And at least that works for me currently,
Great. I appreciate you sharing that. And I would love for you, if we can go over some of, your favorite pieces from Pieces of Me and moments, or maybe some of the mints that kind of surprised you.
Definitely. Yeah. Let's jump into screen share.
Yeah.
So I think Piece of Me, like I'd love to just show you this one. This is like one of my favorites. Specifically around this random. This is called the palette is random. And what I did with this one is I just took like every color that was in Moments, honestly, and put it together in there, and then basically. And I added a couple different palettes in Piece of Me too, and basically just randomly just picked them at random and put them in this configuration. And when I first saw it, I was like, I didn't know what to think about it, but it slowly just like it grew on me a lot. And it turned out to be one of my favorite, like it's probably my favorite palette of Piece of Me. It's just so interesting to just have this patchwork of so many different colors, that some that don't go together, some that do, but as a whole, like create something that's pretty interesting. So it's definitely pretty cool.
Awesome.
I think and I think one of the things that's cool about Piece of Me is the way I kind of went about it is the structure of it. That's different than Moments. Like it's creating it so that you're having this underlying thing. The underlying is basically a big rectangle, and then I'm dividing that up into these bunch of different pieces that are there, but then I'm not exactly filling them all in. I'm kind of somewhat filling them in, or there's some randomness there. So it creates, like we talked about earlier, of this feeling of there's an underlying precision of like this structure, but I'm not entirely following the structure, which is really cool to me. And again, I think what I enjoy in generative art is really when you are, like I said earlier, you're kind of marrying the this hard computation with this human element of imperfection, and making something that's created by a machine feel human. And I think that's really what I look for when I'm collecting generative art, and also when I'm creating generative art. So I think so that's Piece of Me. I mean, looking through, like, they just, obviously the variability, some of them only have like a couple paint strokes. I think 2 is like the minimum. And then others have a lot of them. This one right here has that rainbow again, like hidden here. It's in some of them. Just as like a fun touch. And then this one's war paint. This is one I like a lot. I actually have it in my Twitter banner.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool, just a blend of colors. And again, both my projects, they have this opportunity to have the speckle, which is basically, I just envisioned it as, like the artist, potentially like, just like throwing the brush at the page at the end of after painting this. And you have kind of these paint speckles that kind of could go all over the page. And I guess that's something with both my projects so far that I think is interesting, is just like I'm emulating. I think generative art, I think it can go in a lot of different directions, but I definitely look towards more of like an emulation vein of like, how can I emulate traditional, like art, like painting and things like that. I think other generative artists, they're like not interested in that at all, and they want to do completely new, like crazy digital only things that don't look anything like traditional art, right? Which is cool too. So I think it's cool we can have like this a number of different styles and kind of aesthetics that people can bring to generative art and really do all different types of things with it on art blocks even. So
awesome.
It's really cool. And so we can jump over to moments. And,
yeah, please.
This one right here, I want to show, because this is actually probably my favorite, if not one of my favorite outputs from moments. It's somewhat rare because it has the glitch, which is basically related to the orientation. It's basically every time it's doing a stroke, it's flipping 90 degrees. So it's just, basically making this square almost structure, but it's not entirely a rare one, but something about the composition of it really just speaks to me. And I'm just like, this is, I don't know, awesome. I think the colors as well, I think just the deep red color, and then also the variation in the color in between when like how these strokes are made is really compelling as well. So I just like this one a lot.
Yeah, I really like the gap actually between that right side specifically. You can kind of see that
right
gap
here, right?
between, yeah. And then also, you can kind of see a line on the top left and right to kind of almost make a square, but it looks like the bottom doesn't have like a connecting tissue, like a connecting brushstroke, which I find interesting as well.
Yeah. I think there's something about it that it just is compelling to me. And sometimes you can't explain it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's important to anytime you're looking at work or collecting or anything, or making art, it's important that it resonates with you, and to listen to like when you feel that inside of, okay, this is resonating with me for some reason, and maybe I can't even explain it, but it is.
I agree.
And then this is one that's, this is a maelstrom magnitude, which just that the magnitude kind of feature determines how wavy the brushstrokes get. If they're kind of straight across, if they're flat, it's kind of just straight across. If this is kind of the craziest one where it's like has this huge loops over and kind of creates this like almost like eye structure type thing, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I love that one. Cool. Well, I'd love to, talk a little bit about you as a collector.
Sure.
Just as you mentioned earlier, you've been around since, I believe, was it March of last year, 2021?
Yeah, around that time, yeah.
Which is, if you think about it, it's like 18 months, but in this space, multiply that by 3 or 4. So maybe that's like 5+ years, in the crypto space. But, like I said, you're a longtime collector. You've been around art blocks for a very long time. You know, as you as a collector, not as like an artist, like how do you go about collecting? Like, what is there like a specific feature that really needs to stick out for you, or how do you go about collecting?
I think that's a great question. I think for me, I know like a lot of artists, collectors. I think everyone that's been around art blocks a while will tell you about the wall test. And and I don't think it works for. I don't necessarily think like it works for me just because I like to hang things on my wall. But if some people they don't want to do that, so it's like maybe the wall test isn't the best. But the wall test is pretty much like don't buy anything that you wouldn't hang on your wall, which I think just the concept of is very good because I think people can get caught up in speculation around price or what's the hottest project or, something like that, and not actually like buy something because you actually like it. I think this, as we've seen, this year with, just the market and things like that, things can go up and down and sideways. No one knows where the prices are going, but, at least if you buy things that you have a personal connection with and you actually enjoy, you never can lose, right? Because you bought something that you really like and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
That's always important to me. I think that also just it's just in anything, that also helps you to buy things, that would be potentially valuable in the future or not, is thinking about, what do you, like having like trusting an inner feeling of, okay, this is good. This is not for me. And I think that by doing that, you insulate yourself from the noise of the rest of the market or the rest of the collectors or whatever, or the speculators. And you can start to buy things that really are something, and really, I think in the long tail, people then realize, that, will recognize that thing that you're feeling.
Yeah,
But maybe they don't in the moment because of all the speculation and noise.
definitely. Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, maybe we can take a little bit of time, and cruise through your deca gallery.
Sure. Let's do it. So this is my deca gallery. It's kind of a work in progress, but I'll share some of it. So it starts off with kind of just my work. I have Moment Zero and Piece of Me Zero. So my Genesis mints from both my projects. And then I have some just random moments that I own here with different configurations, starting off with these ones, and then get into more Piece of Me. Just some examples. I don't own all these Pieces of Me. I forgive me. I don't know the collectors off the top of my head, but thank you for collecting them. But I'm just putting them in my gallery just because I made it. So these ones, which we already looked at, we actually looked at some of these before. This is another one I made, called the With Souls, and this is the Shields Up, sorry, that we talked about earlier. And then we kind of get into the stuff that I've collected. Have an Art Blocks Day Zero set here, which I think I really like this one because of the kind of configuration of these. Like it goes from the dark to the kind of reddish to the more yellowish tint. So I think they kind of, in the squiggle in the middle, kind of like connects those two. So I think it's a really cool Day Zero set. I'm a little biased, but I like it.
I appreciate it. I think a lot of people, especially in Block Talk and on our Discord, a lot of people talk about Day Zero. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's something that I just think it's something that is I think more people have been coming around to it and collecting them because I think with lately as we've seen kind of generative art pick up a little bit in the last couple of months or so. And then I have a couple PFPs, just some random ones here that I've collected with Bright Moments, Moonbirds. This is Mattow's PFP, and then this crazy Obit one that was like a Dead Punks thing that happened last fall or something.
Yeah.
But I still like it. And then we get more into like the kind of art blocks, generative art stuff. This was by Aaron Penne, and I think this one in particular was, I don't know when I exactly got this one. I bought it on secondary, I know, and it was just such at the time, and it was like, you know, probably maybe again like spring last year, shortly after the project came out. And I remember it was just such a grail piece for me, and I think I got it for like, I splurged and got it for like 0.5 ETH or something like that. And it just is one of my favorite pieces. And then, you know, obviously Squiggle, a couple of those. These ones, this Phototaxis, I was able to I love this set, right? Like I do like sets, like we were talking about earlier, and I like to, you know, think of how can I put things together in interesting ways. So, you know, this is a set of that. These are in the Gravity series by Jimmy Hedberg, and that's how you pronounce his name, right?
Yeah, I think it's Jimmy Herdberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Herdberg? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy.
No.
You see everybody's name in Discord and on and then when you meet them in real life, or you have to talk on a podcast, you're like, wow, like how do I pronounce these names?
I deal with that every single time when I do After Dinner Mints. It's like I always try to remember to ask people before we start the episode, but sometimes I forget and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna botch it. But
so I apologize to everyone. It's you know, it's like you know, you're reading a book and like you go through the whole book and like then you go talk to someone else about the book and like you pronounce the name in your head wrong the entire time for like hours.
I see you have an Alexi set right there.
Yeah, exactly. These are a Void set that I really liked. I think again, like sets, I just really like, you know, think of how to create sets and kind of things like that. This is actually from my brother, Brett Sylvia. He does some photography work, so I bought that one off of him. And I think like it's cool to just mix photography in with you know, generative art and things like that. Yeah, then have some more art blocks pieces from, you know, Memories and 100 Print, and this is a 101 by IPP Sketch. And I actually have this downstairs now printed out. I post this on Twitter if you want to check it out. If anybody, let's go back and check it out. But then I have some letters. This is a project, Letters to My Future Self, released shortly after Moments, and it's like one of my favorites art block set piece as well. Just because it just is like, again, like it's something like similar to Moments. It's a very like emotional kind of series, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It resonates with me a lot, and it's you know, the aesthetic, I think it matches my aesthetic of what I'm looking for in creating art as well. It's just a project I really love. Got a couple, it's just a different one, Chimera. This was actually one that I bought recently by Luke Shannon. Let's see if it opens up on OpenSea. OpenSea's, no, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
This was actually on display in New York, and I ended up buying it. And Luke's going to send me a print for it, but it was on display there. So looking forward to that one. But it's not displaying right here. I'll have to look into that. This is a homage by Raphael Rosendahl. Another great artist, someone who I consider a friend. Anytime I go to New York, I usually try to meet up with. Just another great artist has been doing it for a really long time that I really look up to. And even beyond, you know, just beyond art blocks or any of that, just has been in the game for a really long time. Does this great minimalist kind of feel, and does it like pulls it off like so well. So another great artist. I'll just fly through these really quick. Have, you know, some placements, some ontologies. This is another good set, I think. And then this is some FX hash, different projects, and some other things like that. And we got Dive.
That's a really nice one. I think that one, just like the colors and the symmetry it has between that piece, that's a stunning one right there.
Yeah, I love this. And there's a moment. I know we don't have a ton of time, but like, I don't know if it will get there, but it actually may be coming right now. But there's a moment in this piece that maybe it will happen when we're talking, but it actually completely goes yellow, the entire screen. And it's like almost like the sun, like it's crazy. And I just think it's an amazing moment. Like in this piece, it's one of my favorite pieces. And again,
did you mint that?
Yeah, I minted this one. Yeah.
Oh man, that's even
and
better.
Raphael,
that's even like
here it is. Like it's coming right now.
Oh, that's cool. I don't think I've ever seen that with any of the other pieces.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Raphael is just so good.
He really executes this project.
He just and he has a very, you can tell his pieces, like he's very his look is very
easy to notice. That's
easy to notice. It's very simple, very minimalistic, but he executes it very well. And he's one of my favorite artists out there. These were the series from Sergeant Slaughtermelon, I think is how you pronounce it. Before he did an Art Blocks project. I think he did one Art Blocks project, I believe. I forget the name of it, but forgive me. But this was another project he did before that, which I collected a set off of, which I really liked. Have some different Zancan off of FX hash. This is Jeff Palmer, I believe, on FX hash, and then a couple more FX hash pieces. So Dead Ringers, a Decagon, and then finished it up with a Jax, glitch art piece. And this is like, I bought this picture of this Raven from on OpenSea when I like first started in the space. And I don't know. I don't think it's it's just one thing that you just resonate with. I think the artist, I think I'm his only sale or her only sale ever. But
cool.
Maybe people,
but it resonated with you,
Exactly. That's the thing. You don't have to think just buy things that you like and that resonate with you, right? Like that's the most important thing. Don't Absolutely. Always care about the market. And I think even if you think that way, I think you'll end up doing well because the market will catch up with that type of thinking. You know what I mean? The market's always focused on speculation and things like that, but those core principles and the artistic elements to it, like that, those core elements are the things that are over the long term, people notice and people want to collect. And I think that's just so important to really collect things that you feel that connection to. And I think other people will feel that as well. You're not just alone with that. So if you listen to yourself when you're collecting, I think you'll do well, both just in general and just in the market as well. Not financial advice or anything, but
yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your perspective as being a collector and an artist. I think that's always cool to talk to people about, as artists, it's like, art resonates with you obviously in so many different ways. So it's cool to see like what you see in those pieces that you collect. So I appreciate you sharing that. Well, I have one more, question before we wrap things up. I believe that, mental health is such an important part of the space. I think it's tough to navigate the space because, things move so quickly. Things are open, 24/7. It's not like there's like a closing time or anything. But I'm curious, what do you think about when it comes to mental health? Like, how do you wind down after, a project is fully minted, or maybe even, during the process of coding a project?
Yeah, I think it's an important point. It's something that I'm still learning, and I think a lot of people are in the space. I think more recently, I actually uninstalled like social media from my phone, which I think was really helpful. In Discord too. So it's really like I think just like which has been really feeling really good. It's kind of like just like I think you need to have a break. You need to spend time with family. You need to spend time with in nature. You need to do other things outside of this space. I would always recommend that. So I think and a lot of times I feel like even uninstalling it from social media or I mean from your phone or something like that, you won't miss it like after a little bit, like, and you'll still catch up with everything when you go to your computer and you actually look at it or something like that. So I think just like, don't notice how much you're consuming, right? And how much time you're spending, and making sure you're allocating your time to things that matter, like family and just your own mental health, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. Great. I appreciate you sharing that. And then, finally, how can people reach you? Should they have any questions? I know maybe this is a good time for like social media plugs or yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think the main way is to, either on Discord and in like the Art Blocks Discord, just adding me in the factory channel or in just Block Talk or whatever. And I'll usually check there. I think if you want to follow me, my main social media is Twitter. So you can go to my username on there is r4v3n _art. And if you follow me on there, that's my main social channel. So that's where people can follow me.
Great. And we'll go ahead and include all those links inside of the show notes when this airs. Well, Raven, I really, really appreciate you being on After Dinner Minutes. This has been great to kind of talk about your projects, your background, and then also you as a collector. So I appreciate you being on here today.
It's awesome. Thanks for having me. It's a truly honor to be part of this community. So I appreciate you and everyone at Art Blocks and all the collectors and everybody's in the Discord.
Awesome. Thanks, Raven. Well, we got a couple news and notes. As you know, After Dinner Minutes is a podcast. All of our episodes here that you're watching on YouTube, they're actually podcasts as well. So what you got to do is just go on Spotify, Google, and just look up After Dinner Minutes, and you'll be able to listen to any of our shows. Finally, we have a weekly newsletter that gets delivered once a week with information on upcoming drops and generative art related news. You can find a link to the newsletter in the description of this video. Again, I want to thank Raven for being on After Dinner Minutes. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I always enjoy, when we meet up in person at events. And I'm actually,
Definitely.
Are you going to be at Marfa this year?
Yeah, I'm planning on it. So as of right now, yes.
Awesome, cool. Well, I look forward to seeing you in Marfa and hopefully connecting with a lot of other people in November. For anyone that's tuning in, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, be kind to each other, buy what you love, and we will see you all next week. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.